Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined as always by Matt and Shad. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing good, Brad.
Hired.
So, we've each individually, while Shad is recovering from a convention, but we've all kind of got run over by a freight train called the Time Change this week. So
Ah,
I was
oh
doing
yeah.
fine until today, and then I just got hit by a truck with it today.
I today was rough. Like I didn't even realize that it was gonna be daylight savings time, which I feel it's early this year. Maybe I'm
No,
mistaken,
remember
but
they changed it. They changed it in a like around, was it like 2007 or so, and it's
I
just,
don't remember.
I don't know.
It
Oh,
it seems to me like I feel like it's usually like in April, but I could be wrong. And point is like I didn't even know it was happening until I was on like a work meeting on Friday, and someone casually was just like, "Oh, like don't forget to set your clocks back." And I'm like, "What are you talking?" Or set forward. It's forward. It's bring forward.
yeah.
Like, don't forget, just like switch your clocks. And what are you talking about? And it's like it's daylight savings time. I'm like, oh no, no, because it's the bad one.
Yeah,
It's one where you're setting your clocks forward, which I guess if you like it getting darker later, maybe is fine.
that's the
But
one
if you
good
have to
thing
get up,
about it.
but if you have to get up early to get to work or whatever like that, it's like, oh no. And like today, like I have an alarm and I overslept by like 15 minutes, which wasn't crazy, but I looked at because my alarm is my phone basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I looked at it. I'm like, oh no, it's like I slept in 15 minutes, and then I was like, man, why did I do that? I'm usually pretty good. And it's like, oh, that's right, because it's not like I didn't get up at like 6. It's like 5. So
Yeah.
yeah, no wonder I overslept because I'm tired.
I'm
Yeah.
like physically incapable of sleeping through my alarm.
Your body is trained to wake up.
Yeah, I've always been
I
that way.
I can't really do that. The only time I can do that is if I really have something important, like a presentation or something, and I'm already anxious about it.
hmm
And so I know, like, let's say I have to get up at like 6. Like I'm anxious about it. Like I'm not, and that, but I feel like that's more like I don't really sleep well. So by the I'm maybe lightly sleeping. So as soon as like the alarm goes off, I'll be like up. I won't have to even like hit snooze. I don't know. I can't do what you did. One thing I can do, conversely, I can basically like turn myself off like a light. Like I could be like, all right, good night, put my head on the pillow, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
out. Like I don't struggle with
I'm Matt. I
insomnia.
have a superpower.
Yeah, it is. I freaked my wife out once years ago, because I was like, all right, good night. I'm gonna turn myself off now. Like, and I just like closed my eyes and I went to sleep in like seconds. And she like woke. She actually woke me up. She's like, what happened? I'm like, what's going on? I'm sleeping. She's like, you just turned yourself off. I'm like, yeah, I told you I was going to. I could do that. She's like, how do you do that? I don't know. I've always been able to do that.
I since I got on
Freak.
my antidepressants, I can do that, but I could
Mhm.
never do that before. But so tonight
Well,
we're
the
gonna
thing,
be just doing
uh,
we're gonna be doing some basic comic talk. Because there was Revolution, but I didn't watch it.
It was
And
really good.
yeah, that
It
seems
was
to be the word on the
really,
street.
really good.
I didn't watch it either. It had 3 matches, which at least 3 matches, which are probably going to be in the contention of the discussion for best of the year.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen some people really, really dog the main event, and I think I know Brad, you and I probably have thoughts on the Death Rider angle, but from what someone made a criticism today, which I think is probably going to wind up true because I haven't seen it either, but people said that if the main event had not been the main event, if it had been on like middle of the show, and one or two of the other matches went last, that this would have been like considered one of the best pay-per-views of like the last 30 years in terms of like the quality.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but I've heard a lot of people agree with that sentiment. So
It
I would
was.
tend to say like it probably was a letdown after some of the hitters they had.
So the match itself was fine. It was after the damned after the damn the 2 matches that came before it. Yeah, it was kind of a letdown. But The truth is, I believe there's a TK quote out there that he put that one on last because he wanted the post-match angle to be on there, and it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I follow that. I don't have any issues with that being a thing. But otherwise, I think that I think that the Mariah May Tony Storm would have been the last match on the card.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I mean,
what.
they killed it.
Well, and they have. I mean, they have the emotional investment. They drew a pretty good number, like at 1 in the morning on
Mm.
the Grand Slam. Like, I just think I just think that's the angle that they have the most like actual investment in, and I would have gone with that because we won't go too deep into it. But the Death Riders is a plague that needs to be exterminated with fire, and they're just gonna make us suffer for another 3 months, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I would hope they pivot and just put it on Swerve, but there are people who are arguing like they don't believe it's going to happen. They'll believe it when they see it. And
Yeah, I'm for.
hold on. What's the plan though? Who is actually going to defeat Moxley for the title? Darby? Is that the idea?
I don't know.
If it's going to be Darby, then I think
But
that would be the stretch. But
First off, I don't know if Darby's going to be done with Everest by then.
No,
I don't really know when he's...
Everest is
hang on.
Everest is like months. I think you have to like plan like 6 months for Everest. At least 4 months. You have to.
Yeah,
slate
so I don't
out
know
for
if he's going to be
I'm
back.
looking it up.
Number one,
The season,
not to be dark, but people have noted this, and it's like it's actually true if you actually study this. It's like Everest isn't just like, oh, I'm gonna go like climb, this like 1,000-foot little hill that's over there, like an hour drive away.
No, you have to.
It's halfway across the country, and a lot of people have died.
Well, but
A
the
lot
thing
of
is, the
people
thing
have
is that
died.
people don't understand about it is so I know way too much about Everest. So you have to do it in stages. It's not like you don't just go up one day and come back down. You have to go to a base camp, you acclimate for like a week, then you go up further to another base camp and you acclimate a week, and then you can start talking about climbing it. And then the thing is when you come back down, you have to do the acclimation process again.
There's base camp, and then there's camps 1, 2, and 3. And camp 3, I think, is either on the edge or in the death zone. So you have to set out from camp 3 at like 4 o'clock in the morning to make summit, and then make it back while the sun's still up.
And this is like also this is if things go perfectly and you don't like have to come back because you get altitude sickness.
So the quick Google says the Everest climbing season is from April to May. So if he had already been planning everything and that sort of stuff, he may do it in April. So I guess we'll see. But I had thrown you guys what I thought was a pretty good way to handle if they wanted to do for the current thing was to you roll in Swerve going for the title with Hangman's turn. And I can absolutely in my head see it play out, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see because there could be a lot of stuff.
I think your way of handling it was good. I still think, and I mean, I think it's extra dumb because they put the international title on him. Like, I think because this is, I think this is the first time that audiences outright like rejected something. I think they've had failures that have driven people away, but I think this is the first time like something's been absolutely just dying on the show. And I think like just do Omega and then like get it kind of restart from there. Just kind of put it on your biggest star and do a soft reboot and go from there.
I think they really want to do Omega Okada first, which it seems to be that's the plan for All In. I think is what they're going to do,
Yeah.
which makes sense because that's your American dome show. So that's going to be like your biggest show of the year. Like you want to put all your strongest matches there. I imagine for women's wrestling, we might see like Mercedes versus Athena because they're starting to maybe kind of trend in that direction. People have people get a little crazy, including like Dave Meltzer. Like when Omega came back after like being on the shelf a year and had the really awesome match with Gabe Kidd. What match is this? Like with Takeshita? Is this like a second match back? Third match? No, he had Brian Cage. So it's at least his third.
Yeah,
How many matches has he had? Like a handful.
Yeah.
But
not a
immediately,
lot.
the first one with Gabe Kidd, people were like, "Oh, put the title on Omega immediately," and it's like, I mean, I'm for. I love Omega. I think he's the greatest of all time. So I think that yeah, you probably should put the title on Omega because it's like it's different than 3 years ago when it's like, well, sure, put the title on Punk because Punk's not getting younger, and you need to squeeze as much juice out of that orange as you possibly can.
When they were a much
I think,
stronger product, you don't like. I think
yeah,
I think where I come from with that, because I agree with you, put the belt on him, and I'm not coming from it from like an insane person. It's just your business is weak. So when your business is weak, you should put it on your biggest star. And I think we have pretty good evidence based on ratings and everything that
mm,
Omega is their biggest star, as much as some people would get pissed off by that. So to
yeah.
me, it's just like, okay, he's back. He's obviously, I mean, obviously his health is a concern, but it's just like I just put the belt on him. Like your business is weak,
I
that's when you need to put it on your big gun.
I well, I was building towards. I do think Omega. You should push Omega, and you should do it because much like with Punk, it's like Omega's getting older. He's like 40, 41 now. Um, and I think Omega is on such a different level than anyone else that even if you were to say, and it may be true, that Omega has declined, like in ring and health wise, which I don't know exactly that I would say that, but okay, let's say he's on the downward trend. He's at such a different level that his downward trend, he's still going to be better than the vast majority of people
He's better than
out there,
everyone
or even
still.
everyone, yeah, or than everyone. But he has been, in the last like few years, he's had some pretty bad health issues. So you don't know, you can't necessarily count on him being there too much longer. Or he maybe if he is, you can't imagine it's going to be maybe like a Brian Danielson, where it's like, yeah, you can't count on him to be like weekly TV necessarily. Which so you need to get as much you can out of him, and I do think you should give him like another big, potentially long run with the title. And well, that would kind of sort of try and square the circle because if you want your champion to be on there week after week, you don't have to actually have him wrestle.
No.
I mean, not to be like the WWE. We saw the WWE, you can have a world champion that wrestles once every like 3-4 months if you really want to, but um, you don't have to have Omega even as champ like wrestle every week. He could just wrestle a couple times a month, and that he can still give you a great performance. You don't have to have him do G1 level physical beat up his body. Um, but I'm okay with them building towards him winning the title maybe later this year. But I think they need to end the Death Rider stuff. And how do you do that? I don't know. I think you could put the title again on Swerve and have Swerve hold it. I mean, I think Omega Swerve would be a big money match. And if you want to push that until have him hold the title and push that until the fall.
Yeah, but the problem is
After you have Omega Okada.
the problem I
But
see with that though is with building up to Omega winning it is if you're if you're if you're losing audience, like at some point you have to say, well, if we build it, if we spend time building to this, we're not going to have enough audience left to rebound from. Like that's kind of why I think sometimes like what I said, like I would have just hot shotted it right onto him at this pay-per-view just because just from a purely business perspective is where I'm coming from. Because then you could just go do whatever you want. If you want Omega and Okada to be your big ticket for All In, why not have the world title on the line? Because just
So
make it that much bigger.
one of the rumors that I have heard floating around from a largely reputable source was that Omega Okada is going to be the merging the international and continental belts together because like too many singles belts, and in doing so they'll have you put those together. Omega's the one that puts them together, and then it's and then you just have the Continental Classic once a year that's either a shot at that belt or that belt picks up that particular gimmick.
I would agree with him doing that only because I don't think you need a belt for the Continental Classic. I think the problem with that we talked about this on the show. There's two problems. One, you have the Owen Hart tournament, so it's almost like if you want to do something that's your equivalent of like the King of the Ring, the Owen Hart's kind of that. So I know like the Continental Classic is kind of like your G1, but it's like I don't know that you need a title for that. If you want to kind of make it like the G1 where whoever wins that is in line for a world title shot if they're not, already the world champion, then sure, but they don't need a title for that. But I think that they did that because they were going to get Okada. They didn't know this. I don't know. They probably were negotiating with Okada. Eddie Kingston obviously was the first, but maybe they were negotiating with Okada, and they put the title on him because you want to have Okada be a big star. What's the way to do that? Have him hold a belt, for months.
Yeah.
So
well, it helps.
Yeah. So I kind of get that, but I also don't feel it's necessary. I like the international. They've actually done good stuff with. I feel the international by and large.
I think that pisses me off because it's like if you're gonna nuke one of your singles titles, the TNT belt is right there, and no one gives a flying fuck. No,
that's exactly why you don't nuke that one. Is because you have your TV title, your international, your world. That's it. That is your lower card belt.
But it didn't used to be like when they started. That was their secondary title, and I think it was meant to kind of be more like your U.S. title or Intercontinental title. But the booking has been bad. I think the booking fluctuates. It's been good, but it also will go back and forth.
It has bouts of good, and for every like good reign, like Christian's reign, they go and they just torpedo. Like I don't even know who the TNT champion is right now.
Garcia. Yeah,
so, and it's working.
Before that it's good, but it's also like I don't feel he's booked perhaps as well as he should be, and that's not me trying to be like, because there are people who are ridiculous, that's unfortunately the modern wrestling fan that they equate to like this guy's getting buried. Oh, like so and so, whoever, Triple H, Tony Khan, like they fumbled him. It's like that, and what they really trying to say is like, oh, they didn't make him world champion, defeating everyone every week, and it's like. You can't have that. You can have one person be the world champ at all times. I guess two if you're the WWE, sort of. But you can't. One person can't be the main character.
Yeah.
But they can't be the one character, the main character. But you can't have like 50 main characters. You can have a lot of stars. Even going back to like the Attitude Era, which is the thing that they did well. It's like, oh, Austin's like hurt. He's going to be out on the shelf for like months. Oh, well, you have like 5 other guys who can step in and fill his role, and maybe they're not the level of star, but it's like you can survive and maintain. I think it's fine to have Omega and Ospreay and Swerve and like a bunch of guys like
but
Hangman,
there's
MJF.
But those people get like way afield and will say like, oh well, they fumbled like, I don't know. We just do it because I love shitting on Rovert, but like they'll be like, "Oh, they're fumbling Ethan Page," and it's like you would not put like you would like, and I mean NXT can do it because NXT is not like a real like it's a TV show, but it's like you're not going to do anything of consequence with Ethan Page. Like you would kill your business, and like that's the thing. Like when they start saying stuff about that with both companies, it's like you're not going to put the world title on that guy. Like that guy's a mid-carder.
Yeah, the idea that someone's been fumbled it just seems to me like it's a rather disingenuous way to try and pick up points.
And I mean, they do like, fumble people, but like we never talk about those guys. But I think the problem with the TNT that I see is you get a really good reign, like you get Christian's reign, and I mean Edge got hurt, but like they never when they get that good like booked reign that kind of elevates the belt, they always just drop the ball with the next reign.
Like, let me throw another piece of contention onto it. They're not going to get rid of the belt that Brody Lee held. It's not going anywhere. That one's not happening. And so, has it been up and down? Sure. Do I wish it wasn't? Also sure. But then on the other hand, if you're going to have a trial run of pushing somebody and you want to kind of give them a push and give them some recognition, that TNT title is a pretty good place to start. And like I said, I think Garcia's working pretty well right now. He's on a lot. He's working a lot. He's getting ready to have a match with Adam Cole for it. Like, and that's elevating his visibility. I think it's doing all right.
Hey, Adam Cole's doing pretty good. He doesn't look jaundiced anymore.
He's got his tone
Hey,
back.
you
I
know
just
what?
can't with the Death Rider stuff. Like I have this knack for I'm like, well, Dynamite's on. I'm gonna turn it on, and it's the Death Riders every time I fucking turn my TV on. I'm just like, oh, I'm good for this week.
They the problem that they have it, which has become more obvious, and this pay-per-view is really kind of nails it home, is that you had a show that outside this was like the I know, Brad, you're making your point about like, oh, they're hurting and like the ratings have actually kind of stabilized somewhat. The attendance has actually done pretty well. They were
Well,
smart. Yeah, it's like we're not going to book. We're not
they
outside. Good,
I was gonna say they started booking smaller venues and made tickets more scarce. So instead of
but that's smart.
well,
That's
yeah, I was
that.
gonna say instead of booking like an 8,000 seat arena and getting like 3,500 fans, they're booking a 2,500 seat arena and selling it out. So like I
Yeah,
think that's
and
smart.
that's what they should do. But um, the product is very well received now, like largely. But and with acts that are really popular, Revolution did the most attendance it's done since last year, which was the retirement of Sting. So it's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot of people in the building for that because it's a special occasion that you can only really do whenever you have these like intermittent retirements, and it's got to be for big guys. Like they didn't sell, 10,000 plus for God love him Christopher Daniels retiring, or a few weeks ago. You didn't get that. But Sting, like, yeah, you'll pack the building for that because Sting has been a huge star
Well,
for many many years. But
they booked the exact right place to
yeah,
do his. I think the problem I have with them right now though is it's the like their pay-per-views do fine. They have not lost any business. They do the same buy rates. They do well sales wise, and I don't understand how they can't look at that or look at Grand Slam that did really well ratings wise, and not say, hey, maybe we need to figure out how to get this energy into the TV weekly instead of like, and then our ratings will go up because that's I think that's kind of the cognitive dissonance I have with them. It's like your pay-per-views do really well because they deliver and they're special, and it's like you've lost that with the TV on a weekly basis. Like the TV is largely like throwaway and forgettable a lot of times.
it's I feel it's better. But it can trend towards being very intermittent or hit or miss. It's like you could have a awesome Dynamite or Collision, and then the next week it could be kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, filler. But usually, generally, I feel like there's at least one or two things per show, even if it's a more of a filler episode. You'll have like one or two things per show that is like really, really good and it gets well received.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have part of the reason why Revolution did so well this year is because you actually have, which is this is the problem that they're experiencing. And I don't like to bring up the specter of like WCW, and it's nowhere near like WCW. But that was the thing with WCW. You had a lot of really entertaining, interesting undercard acts. And here you have some compelling stuff going on, like Hangman Page with his feud with MJF. You have Swerve and Ricochet. You have Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher. You have even like some of the other guys, like the Hounds of Hell, or now you suddenly made like House of
Storm and
Black
May,
now
I think.
interesting.
I would say Storm
Oh,
and
that
May
was
is the best. I would say Storm and May is the best thing they've done in
yeah.
a long time, like as a program booking wise, and like
Oh
getting,
yeah,
and
yeah. That's partly. I think that's partly why people are saying like that should have main evented the
because
show,
like
and they had a good argument for that.
I would say that's because that to me why I think that works, and I love the picture. I think of just May is a bloody mess after that show, but it's
Mm.
it is, and this goes across the board with wrestling. It is like an authentic, hate-filled, old school wrestling program, and it feels authentic, which wrestling really struggles with in the modern era.
look, WWE is very, very, very overproduced, and obviously they are the biggest company in the world and make ungodly amounts of money. But to me, like they shy away over sports entertainment, not wrestling. It's like, yeah, because wrestling to me, the best wrestling is always. I know it's the mock like, oh, outlaw mud show. It's like the best wrestling is like you're a little bit of an outlaw mud show. You're a little bit like seedy. You're a little bit like violent. It there is a level because the whole concept is that you're suspending disbelief. These guys aren't really like fighting each other to beat each other bloody, but you kind of want to suspend disbelief about it. And sometimes you have to have it where it's like, no, they actually look, they fucking made each other bleed. They wrapped tape around their fists and dipped them in glass, and they're punching the shit out of each other. And the hook is like this time it's actually women doing this, and they're a bloody mess at the end, just bleeding gushing blood. The blood and guts promotion.
I agree with what you said because I said I've said numerous times that I think wrestling is at its best when it's lowest common denominator in a lot of ways. Like wrestling does need because it is theater, but like the things that make wrestling distinctly wrestling, it needs a touch of the sleaze and the lowest common denominator. Like if you're watching a wrestling program and if it's not offending you on some level, like they're probably doing it wrong.
It needs to look at least a little bit rough, which is part of the reason I don't like the over choreographed sequences, because it's like that looks too good and too clean. Yeah, it looks too fake. And so I want it to be a little rough. I don't want it to be smooth transitions all the time. I want it to have this spot where the guy goes in for the thing and it doesn't go quite right, and so he just grabs a hold of the other guy and muscles him around into it. I want to have that case every now and then where a punch flies and it hits a little bit more than it ought to. Like, give me just enough of that edge. Yeah, give me just enough of a rough edge that I can look at it and go, okay, well, this isn't, a choreographed Hollywood fight scene.
You want your old school like 2E D&D with all the rough edges and the friction and the.
Yeah.
I never played that era of D&D. I played 3.5, and let me tell you, there's plenty of rough edges to 3.5. But
I think friction
the other
is
thing,
the word that I think sums it up really well. Like you don't. There needs to it needs to be not like I think that what hurts with the overly choreographed is we have like the UFC to watch. Like, we know what it looks like. That's what I think was my problem with, like, Zack Sabre Jr. for a long time, where it's like, he was doing all that, what I call grapple fuck stuff. And it's obvious he had, like, never done it before. Because it's like, this is, like, way, like, no one would let you do this to them. Even if you were way better than them. Like, even, like, a total, kind of, like,
a total
white belt, know nothing would put up more of a fight than this and wouldn't let you just, like, do this, like, overly convoluted shit.
By the way, Brad, I wanted to throw one, before we got too far away from it, one point. You were saying, you turn on, you see Death Riders now. They went from being in like 3 or 4 segments a show to only one now. Like, they're not all over the place anymore, for whatever that's worth.
I told you, I have a supernatural ability. They could be on that show for 30 seconds, and I will tune in right for that 30 seconds, because I somehow just have a natural talent for it.
But I think overall the product is better. The fact, in this particular case, I'm actually really happy that Moxley retained, because now we don't have age in a cage for the world title. Like, I liked Copeland with the TNT belt. Okay, cool, I'm fine with that. I did not want Copeland versus Christian Cage for the world title. That's the last thing I wanted.
I would.
No, don't do that shit.
I guess I don't know who they would have done with Revolution otherwise. I wasn't digging the Copeland thing. It just, like, I don't have anything. I'm not calling him Cope. Like, fuck you. I'm not calling you that. Like, it's douchey and it's cringe.
I don't call him that. Yeah.
But I just, and I have nothing against Copeland. Like, but I just don't want him in the main event. Like, you're not like a main event. Like, it's fine if he's doing, like, if him and Christian, or he's in like a main event like of a TV show, that's more than fine. But like a main event of like one of your 4 major pay-per-views, like, no thank you. Like,
Yeah, I don't want you holding the title, but I'm happy to see you otherwise. You know what I get to do now? I get to be happy whenever I hear Alter Bridge again, because that's my favorite entrance music of all time. But up into this show, I was just like, don't do it. Don't do it. And then whenever we had the ending we had, I was like, oh, cool. By the way, spoilers, everybody. Sorry about that if you weren't, whatever. But why are you watching a wrestling show if
Yeah.
you care about spoiler? Anyway, no, I was pretty happy with that. And then the ending angle with Swerve and everything. I was like, okay, all right, I'm getting
Well,
it.
if they pivot to Swerve a Dynasty, like all will be forgiven. But let me finish my thought real quick.
Yeah.
I mentioned there's all these hot acts on the undercard, and it's a little like WCW in the sense that you have this great undercard, and the the main event is just like, it's a wet fart. It's oh look, Rey Mysterio and Dean Malenko had an amazing match. Like, oh look, it's Ultimate Dragon versus Chris Jericho, etc. And then you have, oh look, here it's Hogan and Piper in like a 25-minute Snorefest. It's like,
So
okay.
the one of the biggest things that did happen, and we kind of mentioned that, is that the main event here suffered by what it had to follow. The fact that it followed, like right before it was Osprey Fletcher in the cage, which I don't actually believe that Osprey's not hurt. I don't buy it. That was bloody. It was raw. It was not Osprey's in-ring shortcomings that I dislike so much didn't show up. Like, it was a really good thing. It was a nasty grudge match. I thought that was great. Big props to Kyle Fletcher. He took a dick first bump onto thumbtacks. So, it, and then you have Copeland Moxley following that, and they're not starting crazy hot. They're starting a little bit guarded with each other because that's been the story going into it. But then given what they were following, it's kind of a letdown, and so they did not have a breather match in there. They didn't have anything that let them catch their breath. They just went straight on into it.
I generally think, just as an aside, because no company's ever done this, I kind of think if you're gonna whip out the cage, just put the cage on last. Don't make the crowd sit there while you have to take the damn thing down and everything. And I mean, I know it doesn't take long because I've watched them put the cage up before. It's actually fascinating watching them put a cage up at a show as a aside. But I just would have done the cage last.
This particular case, they lowered it and then just tied the corners together into place. So it's pretty quick. But then on the other hand, it's like, following something that's going to be that charged and have that kind of wacky stuff to it, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
For a program that, and yes, even I will say, was lukewarm going into it. I went into it apprehensive. It was still really good. It's just the specter of all the trappings around it.
Well, it's also I don't dislike Moxley or Copeland or Christian or anything, but it's like you can like three people individually, and then when they commingle in a single match, you're just like, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah.
There's two things about that. Well, we can move on to the main topic, I guess. But the two things that struck me. One was, look, I like Copeland, but why did you have Christian come in and cash in? I'm going to call it the Money in the Bank contract, just so you could get out of not jobbing. Like, you just eat the pin or whatever, the choke, dude. Just take it. Like, you're 50-something-year-old like Cope. Like, you don't need to be protected at this point, especially against a guy like John Moxley,
who's
much younger,
star,
world champ.
Who's a bigger star than you at this point too.
And has held the championship multiple times. It's like if there's a more like need guy, it's the guy who's the current champion. But I also want to take like a silver lining to that. The second thing was that I'm hoping this also means like maybe they will pivot, because you also got rid of like Christian holding this like Money in the Bank contract, like he can the title shot at any point. Having that removed too, it's like, okay, let's clear the field. And maybe
Yes.
they'll just have Christian and Adam Copeland feuding with one another again for a while. Or maybe they'll form
Uh,
forces and like I don't know, whatever. Like they can be
So
doing other things over here, and they can get the main event scene, and maybe other people like Swerve or even Osprey. Like even if they don't give it to Swerve, I don't think they should continue the Death Riders storyline. But if you want to give them like a couple more like months,
no,
you
please
could also because
don't.
Osprey just declared like I'm going for the world title, so you could in theory you could do Mox Osprey and Osprey wins the title by double or
so
nothing. But I don't know.
to answer, when I was watching and I saw Christian cash in, to me it made sense because what's happened is Christian's been chasing, like, Christian's been overshadowed by Copeland for so long, and he's here and he's doing his thing. How he's going to, he wants to be able to get the title, beat Copeland, but then not have to fight Moxley. Like, I get it. It was number one, it tied up that particular string that just has not really landed. And then number two, at least for me, is it's Christian's hubris playing into it. The gimmick is that the guy can't do a damn thing by himself. He succeeds only off the backs of his cronies, so he goes out there and tries to do it himself and screws it up. Like, to me, it makes sense, but I can understand it's like, why do that there? It's like,
I think
okay,
going back to the Osprey point, I think you have to be very careful with having Osprey challenge for the world title because me personally, if I was booking, like Osprey cannot lose his first challenge for the world title. When it's time for Osprey to challenge, he has to win. Like you can't do that. He's gonna lose a couple times thing because it'll kill him. Like you have, like I know he's Dave's special little guy, but to me it's like no. When it's time for Osprey to challenge, he has to win the title. Like there's no ands ifs or buts. There's no jobbing him in a world title
I would
match.
agree with that. If you're doing the big push, and this is why I hated the not Mania this year, but why I hated Cody losing at Mania thing is like you have your big baby face hunt to get there, and then you slap him down because you say you're not good enough. It's like that's horseshit, and that pisses everybody off.
And that's for
I
like
don't think that TK is going to do that because he's been doing so much to keep this guy strong on TV that I sincerely doubt that when the time comes he's going to do that.
and I think the problem with like
But
Cody and Osprey when you do that is they're already established. Like for having guys lose title matches is like when they're coming up the ranks. Like that's like, oh, you're kind of a mid carder, but you're gaining a lot of heat, and well, you lost that world title match, but oh, you're gonna challenge again when you're a little more experienced and you get a little closer and a little closer. But like, that's not the Osprey story or like the Cody story. Like it's about them ascending, not their journey. They've already done the journey. It's about
yeah,
getting to the end.
well, and I'm not hung up on it like a lot of people are. As long as the ending is satisfying, I'm good. But it's the reason that I wanted the Death Rider end um, to be Darby was that's he needs a big establishing win that would put him into the main event, no questions. Like this is a world title guy now. He is and he always will be to establish him. It's just when are we going to get that?
Mm.
I don't think whoever takes the title off Mox, I think needs to be a new star that you're elevating. You can't do, you can't, I would not have it like Swerve or Hangman, cool, but it's too big of an opportunity to elevate somebody, I think, to let it go. If they'd done it with Hobbs, I would have been thrilled. You might have been like, well, that's kind of early to do it to Hobbs, but I would have loved it. Like new guy established, and I love Hobbs in the ring.
I would not be against them, and you could. Well, I think you could do this with Osprey, but I can understand the arguments against it. But you could do. I'm okay with them doing a page out of what Japan does or New Japan does, where it's like we see big things in this individual in the future,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, to really kind of like tease you that he's going to be a big deal in the near future going forward, maybe one of our biggest stars. We're going to give them like a brief run with the title. And then you have someone do that. And they did that. I mean, they've done that and it hasn't worked out. Like they put the title for a couple months on like Evil, and it's like, well, that didn't work out. But
Right.
they have put, sometimes they'll have the history of like putting the title in that Okada, like they gave his first reign was short.
Yeah.
Like Shinsei Nakamura, he had a first reign that was kind of short. It's like it's almost like a
Well,
signal. It's like,
the Shinsuke Nakamura reign, the first reign was short because they made him do that stupid MMA fight and he got like his orbital bone like
well,
broke.
well, I mean they have a history. That's my point. Like they'll sometimes put a title on a guy. It's like okay, it's the obvious tell they really have a lot of faith in him, but they're not. It's just like to whet people's appetite, kind of. Then maybe it's transitional of sorts, but they do it in a way to kind of briefly elevate someone, and then that person gets, you know, they get more later on down the road, like more reigns, or they become a bigger deal. But I'm okay with them doing that. God,
to borrow a TV tropes thing, the first win shows that they can do it. The second win codifies it.
mm.
I'm trying to back you up on that. Sorry.
I saw someone actually argue, because they were arguing specifically about Hobbs, that because some person was saying, oh, like Hobbs needs to like finish the year with the title, and this other person's argument is like that he doesn't need to. Like I don't know that he even needs the title, but they should, you know, book him as like a major star. And I'm of two minds because I'm like I kind of like to see at this point. I think Hobbs has improved. I think they have an opportunity with Hobbs. So kind of wouldn't mind seeing him. Like maybe you put the TNT title on him and give him like a long reign versus like the 1 week reign or whatever long he had before.
Yeah.
But give him like an extended reign with the title. But you should at least try and make him a big deal, like a bigger deal than he is. Like I'm why I brought up the Attitude Era and like how they had a lot of guys built up. Like that's what you should do, because you, as we saw back in the not that long ago with Roman, it's like you don't put everything in one basket. Then the guy goes out like with an injury or something like that, and it's like, well, what do we do? Like if you have like 5 or 6 guys who could be like your main guy, then if one of them goes down, it's like, well, you have a bunch of guys you can slot right in.
Yeah.
And you should want to have like a bunch of guys who are hot. They have a lot of hot guys right now.
Yeah.
Like they have Hangman, MJF is like back again. Swerve obviously. Okada's still, you know, big too. Osprey, of course. Kyle Fletcher. Like they have a ton of guys who really have a lot of heat behind them.
I kind of think it's time they pivot their main event scene around.
Yeah.
Kind of get Moxley down a peg and then kind of put the new guys in. But
yeah, that's why that's why I think it's so important they elevate people. But let's get to our
yeah. Okay,
let's not talk to death what everybody's talking to death right now.
Yeah, so we're just gonna do some comics talk tonight, and I thought we could start off because we've done it like on the podcast version, but I think it's been like a number of years. I actually don't think we've ever talked about like our early. So I kind of thought it'd be interesting, like how each of us individually got into comics, and maybe what the first issue we remember buying for ourselves was. Because for me, the problem is I had a couple of comics here and there before, like I was in, like I had a couple of Spider-Man comics, and I think my grandparents, I remember having like a Fantastic Four issue that wasn't like a Fantastic Four issue. It was like a Marvel Presents or something like that, with the Mad Thinker. But so I guess I could start us off. So I remember like when my parents would go to the store or whatever, and they'd be checking out, I'd always go over to like the spinner rack.
Yeah.
And seeing what the new comics were. And I think like I was always interested in like Iron Man, the X-Men, Spider-Man. That's kind of what my early loves were. And then I think I eventually took the plunge and I mean, it's such a hack one that I got, but like the X-Men #1 that I think everyone owns like 5 copies of.
Yeah, I had that one too. I also kind of, well, when it came to comics, my real early draw was the grocery store news rack. Is I'd hang out over there and read stuff and put them back while mom was grocery shopping or whatever. And then also early on, like the thing that got me into superhero stuff at all was a mixture of the Super Friends TV show and then Super Friends stuff being like the primary toy line that I had as a kid.
Oh, the
So I had the Hall of Justice. Yeah,
superpowers team. Yeah, I had those too.
I had the Hall of Justice. I had Superman's plane. I had the Batmobile that had the clamps that would pop out the back. It's still in really good shape. My kids play with it when we go to my mom's house. There was the Wonder Woman walker because I guess they couldn't sell the invisible jet.
I mean, that's
And
kind
so
of a hard. Well, they could
yeah,
have done clear plastic.
yeah, but I mean, but in the end, here I am enjoying all this sort of stuff, and then the thing that I guess I really enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed reading stuff on the rack, but the thing that I guess really set the hook. My dad was a teacher before he transitioned into an education adjacent job. My grandfather, my dad's dad, and my dad's mom were both teachers. And what my grandfather did, see, I think he taught fifth grade. His rationale was fifth grade's old enough to be smart enough to listen to you, but not so old that they don't like you anymore. To get the boys in his class to read, he just would buy comics, and he had big stacks of comics, and he'd write his name on the front of them. So it's like, no, you don't get to take these home. And so my brother and I went through this giant comics box, and it's not in mint condition, but that's where we found an issue of the first appearance of Wolverine. So, all this sort of stuff.
Do you have that?
Yeah.
With the Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, and Wendigo.
Wow.
I
Oh,
have.
wow.
I have it too. It's beat the hell and back, but I do have it.
I don't know how much it's worth now, but I know like 25 years ago, it was in like a good quality condition was worth like some money.
I have it.
Well,
I paid like 50 for mine like 20 or 30 years ago just because I wanted to say I had it. It's in crap shape. My copy of Giant Size #1's in really good shape though.
It's not in great shape, but we do have it. And so we have all this stuff, and we did all these things, and there were all kinds of different things because there was Superman and Justice Society and Batman and Green Lantern and Flash and Sergeant Rock was in there and all this
I
sort
remember
of stuff.
Sergeant Rock.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about
Sorry, I was going to Sergeant Fury, the Heli Commandos. What was Sergeant
No,
Rock? Sergeant Rock.
Sergeant Rock was Easy Company.
Yeah, it
the
was
company, that's right.
DC's.
And I'm not saying shiny, sanitized Sergeant Rock either. Like it was some rough.
It was like the
soldier
70s one
comics.
before they did like the 90s one where like no one like died or anything.
Yeah, that one. That's what really set the hook for. And then I fell off the wagon again for a while. And the thing that brought me back was Kingdom Come. And this past weekend, I got to actually stop and talk to Mark Waid for about 10 minutes about it. And, oh my God, Mark Waid's such a cool dude. So, if I had thought about it, I would have taken my copy of Kingdom Come. Because the first autograph he'd do was just for free to say thank you for being a fan. That's how cool the dude is. But, yeah, didn't happen.
I have a copy of I think Uncanny X-Men #98, like it's not like a super valuable one, it's just early in like the Claremont runs. The artist just happened to be at the convention I bought it at. So he signed it for me cuz if you get the really old stuff, just random bit of trivia, if it's older, you're supposed to get the inside sign, not the outside.
Not the cover.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Matt, you go ahead. I just picked up and ran off with that.
Do you want me to talk about my experience? Like,
Yeah.
because so I was aware of comics, but probably I was more of a fan when I was little, like in the 80s, because of like cartoons. Like I would watch like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, so it's like, oh, I was aware of like comic book characters, but I didn't really read a lot, and it's not as if my parents bought me like new stuff, like from the racks, whatever. But how I acquired this, because it wasn't like from siblings. How I acquired this, I don't know. I have to imagine it must have been just stuff that I either begged my parents for or my parents bought me from like a yard sale,
Mhm.
garage sale. But I remember having like a stack of like old comics, like probably not even like maybe some 80s, but probably more like 60s, 70s
Like
comics.
Bronze Age
And
stuff.
yeah, and a lot of the stuff, and it was a mix of like Marvel and DC, but probably a little more like DC um, than Marvel, which is funny because I actually feel, even though Batman is my favorite comic book character of all time, like I feel like I gravitate more towards Marvel. Um, but it's a bunch of old like comic book stuff. It's some of it's like so beat up that it's like I think I actually still have buried in storage some of those comics, but it's like the covers have long been ripped off. It's just and I would read them over and over
Or
again.
are they like flea market ones that you? This is way old. Like I'm going to be dating myself, but if you used to go to like farmers markets or flea markets, you get super cheap comics. But part of it was they tore the covers off, so they might be those.
Oh,
They might be
I
old
don't
like
I don't I don't know. I mean, it's also like you're dealing with a kid. Like
yeah,
I didn't take care of them like the way I should.
and they were
I remember like
newsprint. They weren't like old
when
comics
I
are
was
not
little,
sturdy.
I remember like when I was little, I would like it was like the weekend. It's like I'm gonna go read comics, and I would like go outside on like a summer day and like read comics, and it like I'm just sitting in the dirt like with my comic.
Dude,
So it's
just
like
the
it,
freedom of I'm gonna take my comics outside and read.
yeah,
God, that's it.
but
I miss
it's
that.
clearly it's like I'm not really giving the care that I had for them, but I had like a stack of that stuff, and I became enamored with it. I still like was young, so my parents wouldn't just like buy me comic books. But um, what I was able to do, because I don't know if you guys had this, but you guys remember, uh, I don't know what they were called, what they were called Marvel Masterworks or something. They remember
Like the
Marvel.
hardcovers.
Mine weren't hardcovers, but Marvel for a time, like in the '80s, maybe even earlier, but I think it was like the '80s. They did reprints of some of their biggest titles, like Incredible Hulk, Fantastic Four, uh, like Thor, like their main character, like their main line, Iron Man. They put out like some trade paperbacks of stuff. Doctor Strange, I remember being one of some like either their origin stories, like the first issues, or it's like some really select issues. And they put out trade paperbacks of that, and it was to get people like who were like me, like young readers into the comic books. And I didn't have those, excuse me, my parents didn't buy me those. They were available at my local libraries. And so I would just like check them out and read them and reread them and reread them. Like I've read some stuff like the original Incredible Hulk like issues or like the Fantastic Four origin issues. Like I've read those multiple times.
Would it
That
be
Do you have one,
anything
Shay?
like these?
Kind of like that, but it was more Marvel than DC.
I know, but this is the one I have to hand.
if
My brother
Yeah.
has the hard copy reprint of the first, I don't know how many Superman comics that came in the
Mm.
Death of Superman bundle.
so they had, and I got them from the library too, because like the main library in Columbus had like a ton of them, but they were Marvel Masterworks, and they'd have 10 issues usually per masterwork, but they were hardcovers, and like if you were gonna get one individually, like when they were coming out, when I saw them, they were like $30 a pop back in like early 1990s money, so they were exorbitantly expensive, but um they would usually come out and they'd have 10 per. Um, so I remember those because that's how I read a lot of old stuff. And I used to love like, X-Men classics or, what was, there were two reprint versions of Spider-Man because they did like Spider-Man classics, but then there was like, oh, what was that? There was another one that was like a reprint of Spider-Man every month that like did the first 300 issues, and it was like, I don't know, 8 years behind what was going on currently. So it was a way to read old Spider-Man.
Yeah. So I kind of got into comics like those two ways. Like my parents got me like flea market or yard sale like box of comics, and I also would get stuff from the library. And then when I was older, this was probably like late 80s, early 90s. Um, back when this just dating myself, back when, you still had department stores, Sears or J.C. Penney's, like they would in part of like the toy section, like in their like Christmas, like their catalog, their yearly catalog. In like the toy section, they actually had a section that they would offer, like you could get a bundle of comics, and this is Marvel Comics specifically that I know I got it. I asked my like for 1 year, I asked like I want these comics for my for Christmas, and you got like 20, 30 stuff, and it wasn't like the super high end stuff. You
It,
maybe get like an issue of the X-Men, but it was like get Power Man issue 3, like just a random collection
Yeah.
of stuff. Like get Namor the Submariner
well,
issue
Random,
17.
well, I
Yeah,
know
random stuff to clear out the back stock.
Sam
yeah,
Sam's
exactly.
Club.
That's exactly what it was. But I loved it, and I still have like some of those too.
Hmm.
Sam's Club used to do those bundles, and I didn't realize till I was an adult later. So Sam's Club would get them intermittently, and you get this big bundle. And I realized later what the Sam's Club bundle was is they would literally take 1 month of like Marvel publishing and put all the issues in there. So like if you
Mm.
get a bundle, it might be every comic they released in April of 1990. And I remember I got a bundle from there once for DC, and it was Zero Hour with all of the Zero Hour mini
Oh,
series stuff
damn.
and every crossover title, like all the zeros and all like
Wow.
like it
Mm.
had the entire crossover, like every issue of it. So I have like every issue of Zero Hour in the crossover because of
That's
that.
that's
Wow.
really cool.
And
I had. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and like they would do the Marvel one like every like maybe a couple times a year. So I don't think you could like follow, like you couldn't do it monthly, but I know like I know you'd run into someone that had like a collection of comics and they'd have this weird like one of everything is like, oh, you got the Sam's Club bundle, didn't you?
So the other place that I saw this, because I'm pretty sure that a comic out of one of those bundles is what hooked my brother on the Green Lantern Corps. I might even remember. I think it was when the Green Lantern Corps defeated Entropy, who had been Krona. Anyway, we got them visiting family in Iowa at Paul's Discount. And I mean, they had stacks. And my brother and I went through all of these stacks, flipping them over, looking at the front and back issues, going like, what do we think is going to be the best one? What do we think is going to be the best choice here? Are we going to do this one? I don't know. I'm not really feeling that front one. Okay, all right. What about this one? I'm feeling better about this one. Okay. This is going to be one of the ones we get. It was, I'm sure it was hilarious to any of the older folks around watching us fret over that.
Oh, that reminds me. I actually before X-Men #1, I actually because do either of you have half price books in your area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
No.
so half prices existed forever here. So I remember I think around the time the Tim Burton Batman movie came out in '89, my parents. I had just come across it at half price because my parents and I would go sometimes, and it was the greatest Batman stories ever told trade, and they got
Ooh.
me that from there. So it had stuff all the way from like I think like his fourth or fifth appearance in like Detective Comics, all the way up into stuff into like the like Denny O'Neil run. So like stuff like Laughing Fish was in there. But in some
Such a good story.
yeah, so that was one of the early ones I got. But half price was a godsend for like trades and stuff back in the day.
It's not as great anymore.
They get picked over
It-
now.
They do, and it's like thrifting went from being, hey, sometimes you can find some cool stuff, to now every damn buddy goes and picks through the thrifting stuff because they want to resell it on eBay. And it's like, what the hell, man?
Or you get like a manager at a half price, which is like, oh, well, this might be something good, $300.
Mm.
The high price stuff I've seen, I look at and I go, okay, I get it for that sort of thing. Like I
They
look at it, I'm like, I understand that.
they never had a half price books, but I feel like when I was much younger, and then I mean, I haven't seen one of these in like probably like 25 years, but they used to occasionally, almost like the spirit of Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
like occasionally you would get like a store was closing or something,
Yeah.
or it had closed, and like in that store for a brief limited amount of time, they do like a discount book store, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd go and it'd just be like rows of tables of like books that maybe like the hardcover book would sell for like 20, $30, and it was on sale discounted for like $5 or something. And it's like, I remember going to those like with my mom back in the day and getting some books sometimes, but I don't, we never had half price books. I would love that. Like I love books. I have like so many
Yeah.
books. One of my actually personal New Year's resolutions was to read more, because like I don't kind of fell off reading a lot because I have two small kids, and it's like where to find the time. But I've actually made
Yeah.
a concerted effort. um I told Brad and Chad, like, I'm reading through the Wheel of Time series right now. I'm only on book 2 though. It's like what, 14 book series. I
It
told you
is, but
this is a multi-year project
yeah.
Yeah.
for me. So it's gonna be some time. Like I'm aiming to at least do one book a year.
Yeah.
Like maybe two
That's
a
a good
year.
pace. That's a
Yeah.
good pace. And if as your kids get older, I don't know, it might pick up, but frankly, that's a good pace. But
Mm.
the other nice thing is you don't have to sit around and wait for an announcement about when the next one's going to come out, because it's just you're just
Yeah.
sitting there and you're like, come on, man,
Half price is really
come on,
good
dude.
for picking up Blu-rays, especially if they hit like the clearance section. You get them for like $1 or $2.
Yeah.
And the comics, like, so I actually had a hobby for a while, and I did pretty well with some of them. Seeing if I could finish off whole runs of stuff from the 80s and the 90s by going through the half price back issue bin. Because I think the back issue bin, it's like $1, and then some of them, like more beat up ones, are like 25 cents. And I think like I got a lot of like Justice League Europe through that, a bunch of the Defenders. I did pretty good on some of those series.
I myself, I like buying trades more. I mean, they hold up better. They're easier to read. Like when I was young, I had a copy of the first appearance of Carnage, and I read it so much the cover was coming off. And it's just like, well, crap.
Yeah.
But that's why I like buying trades. I've got that whole JSA run. I'm staring at it from where I'm sitting right now. I've got Astro City trades over there.
Catalog. And in DC, you can do. I do like the $100 option because then you get Vertigo and like stuff
Mhm.
a month after it comes out if I want to read it. But then the other one, the real scam is if you're watching this, check your local library system because they might have a partnership with Libby and Hoopla, I think, is the other one. And if you go in there and you have a
Mm,
library card, like I'm reading through Spawn currently for free
yeah,
because I'm just checking
yeah,
out the ebook to my Kindle.
through Libby.
Yeah, through Libby, and
Yeah,
then I can read it on my iPad. And like they have Savage Dragon, they have a bunch of image on there, and it's
yeah,
free. Like you can only check out like so many at a time, and you have to like recheck it out after like 21 days, but it's free.
yeah.
Cool.
It is nice, and I'll be honest, I forget about it sometimes. But
I I just
get about it sometimes. But
I I I just gave this whole spiel about reading more. And I am like actual hardcover, or not hardcover, but physical books, hard copy, I guess I should say. But actually, I think I told you, like, Brad, they ran a Black Friday deal on the Marvel. Uh, it's like Marvel Unlimited or something like that. So I bought it because it was like maybe $50 or something, $60. Like it was just deeply discounted. And unfortunately, I read a bunch in like December, and then I think a little bit in January, and I haven't read for like 2 months. So
I'm
I need to get
finishing
back on
off
reading that.
Avengers West Coast right now.
Yeah, I need to get back on like reading comics again, because I can literally do that through my phone. I can like
Yeah,
pull up
I
the
have
comic, read it,
That's pretty much
and
what my iPad for as a fancy comic reader.
yeah, and it's I need to get back on it because it's really, to me, like, it doesn't take like a few minutes to read like an issue. Like it doesn't take me like an hour to read like an issue of a comic book, maybe like 10 minutes, and that's if I am really like paying attention to stuff.
Some of the
So
older stuff, I think like a new one you can blow through in a couple minutes. Like some of the older stuff might take you like 20 minutes. A
Well,
lot
yeah,
of
I mean,
that.
at this point, like again, there's like storylines that I never really read that deeply. Like when I stopped a couple months ago, I'm reading through like the Dark Reign storyline, just because I was trying to read like through all those major Marvel crossover event stuff. But then I also wanted to go back and read some more classic stuff. Like there's tons of like Amazing Spider-Man I want to read through. But
Yeah.
I looked it up, by the way. Half price books, there's like none in and none in my area.
It's true.
Um,
Cuz
there's 6 in Kentucky, Shad,
I know. I got
and
one of them I go to decently regularly.
they
there are
closed
12 in Ohio.
there's like 4 in my city. They closed the one on right off of OSU campus, which pissed me off. They moved it somewhere else, but that was the best one because like it was college students and stuff, so you get all this weird like shit over there. And it was
Yeah.
Mm.
But I'll say the other one that's a real steal that you guys don't really do manga, but the Shonen Jump digital app is $2.99 a month, and it's day and date with actual releases, and they have like the entire run of like One Piece, like anything from that company. They have like the entire runs of like Dragon Ball,
Mm.
all of it, and it's $2.99 a month, which is like
Wow.
ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, I haven't really gotten into to manga, but they're kind of eating comic books lunch. Because if it's like how much you say it's like three
$3.
dollars a month,
Mm-hmm.
like that's nothing. Like if you want to go get a Starbucks coffee, it's more than that.
Well,
It's more than that, and you get less enjoyment out of it.
well, and the thing
Yeah.
with manga is, it has a more varied, like, topics. Like, cause like I'll say, like one of my favorite mangas is a baseball one. There's no like superheroes or anything. It's about a baseball team.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, comics in the U.S. got pigeonholed um, into just being superhero stuff. It's like, you can do a lot more with that format because the comic book format is a unique format. It's not, hey, we have pictures that supplement the words on the page. They are inextricably tied together for your storytelling. And why don't we use that for more? Well, because they've conditioned the market in the US that that's not what they're for.
Well, I think going to like the direct market was like one of the biggest mistakes comics ever made. Because it just made it more insular, and I think that's been terrible for comics because you've just seen like it, only superheroes sell. Like if you get like if you get like a kid that's like interested now, there's not like a lot of good youth titles, and a lot of I would say the regular titles are not appropriate for people under the age of like 13 or 14 now. Like they've really
Yeah.
cut off, and by the time that it is appropriate for them, well, they're already reading like manga.
They're into something else.
Yeah.
It's I I love comics, so I mean the theme of the show is comics. This show, but it's kind of like a dying.
No, it is.
At least Marvel DC it pretty much exists just for content creation.
Yeah.
And to create existing properties for entertainment companies to just churn out something. Obviously, Disney has a well of Marvel properties that they could go to, but even DC, like I know that they're trying to reboot stuff, like with the new Superman movie coming out this year, and kind of rebooting the DC cinematic universe. But they
It's
are
not gonna work.
I mean,
Their plan is stupid. They it's just a scatter shot. Like they don't have like a good. The problem that DC has, and they're doing it again. I think Superman will do fine, but the problem is, and Marvel's having this trouble too. Is Marvel with Phase 1
mm,
showed you the exact groundwork for doing it right, and everyone thinks that they can skip the.
they DC has wanted from the beginning, like they want to skip like 12 steps to get to. I
They
think
just want to
Superman.
jump straight to the success.
Yeah.
I think Superman this year will be fine, but it also has stiff competition. I think it's like released. I don't know what day it is, but like it's a summer release, but it's released, and I think either like I think like the week before it's like the latest Jurassic Park movie, and then the week after it's like Fantastic Four. So it's like
Yeah,
you got strong competition. So
you do, but
I don't know, but I think it depends on what's your measure of success. If you like you want to be Marvel Avengers level, it's like I
They're
don't know about
gonna.
that.
I think they're gonna panic if it doesn't hit 1 billion. Is my
just yeah,
Well,
that's
just in general, like lower your expectations because Creature Commandos, which I haven't even seen, but that's got a lot of buzz and people have seemed to enjoy it, and it's got a second season on like HBO Max. I think it's on Max, right? Um, so it's like, what's your level of expectation?
I'm
Are you
talking
still going to be
about.
able to make some profitable stuff?
I'm
Sure,
talking
like then
about what
it's successful.
I'm talking about what Warner Brothers is gonna what it's gonna have to make for Warner Brothers to not panic and blow something up. It's gonna have to make a billion.
Warner Brothers has deeper problems. Like they're basically in the circling the drain in terms of everything.
Well, they've
Like that, forget
actually
superhero stuff.
they've
Like
fixed they've fixed their cash flow problem, but the problem is they're paying for like decades of bad decisions. Because everyone likes to shit on Zaslav for the decisions he's making, but it's like he he is unfucking like 20 years of bad decisions and like running stuff into the ground. Like you have to make some crap decisions at that point. And
you
you
got
know,
to make some hard choices. Yeah,
and you can't make creative choices at that point. You have to make monetary
like
decisions.
if you're yeah, I agree with what Matt was saying. You put up the you put Superman out there. You don't expect this to be, on the same page as the Avengers. You expect this to maybe be on the same page as a more recent Marvel movie because that's where the temperature is right now. There has been, I don't know, 20 years at this point of superhero movies, and that train of it being the biggest thing is going to have passed on. Sorry, you didn't get in on the height of it. Zack Snyder ruined that for everybody. But if you look at it and you go, okay, we want this to do pretty well. And if we do this pretty well, and we're good with that, and then we expect the same thing out of our following. If all you do is swing for home runs, then whenever you miss, you get nothing. But if you get, singles and doubles and get people on base, then you can drive more home.
I
And yes, I stumbled all over that baseball
think the
analogy,
problem-
but that's what I could think of with your shirt, Brad.
I think the problem that they have, people get really mad when I say this, but I think the problem they have to fight uphill is I would have taken a longer break because when you think about the DC cinematic universe, they had 3 movies that like pretty much made money. Aquaman, I think Wonder Woman, and then Shazam 1 made money. And I think the problem they have with the general public is I think DC on a movie is just like a symbol for crap now. Because like they're
They
doing
made
some like
a lot
animated
of bad choices.
like they're doing but like even now they're doing like an animated follow-up to like Blue Beetle, like a movie no one gave a shit about. And like I like Booster Gold, but it's like I don't know, like that's kind of early in the cycle to be like having a Booster Gold on the schedule.
The
that's
other
a
thing
deep
that
cut.
it is,
Like people, we can all be like Booster Gold. Like I love the character, and he's been done really well in the comic books in the last
And
like 20,
He
25
was good on
years.
Justice League because they had Billy West as Skeets.
yeah,
The character's been done well, but it's also like this is how do I equate this
Is the
to like this is like Marvel movies being like let me really think like hard like
It'd be like doing Guardians of the
obviously had, like,
Galaxy like year 2 or 3.
yeah maybe like Booster Gold is like
I
a major
mean-
character and he's been a major character in like the last 25
I mean,
years or so.
Guardians was a super deep cut, like when they did it, but they had a lot of
Yeah,
buy-in by
but-
the time.
They did, but they also were smart about it in that it was different enough and quirky enough
it was
that they
fun.
made it work. Yeah, they made it
It
work.
was just fun.
Well, I think the
And
problem.
they also lucked out. They had Chris Pratt, he has a lot of charisma. So that was like you lucked out. You made the right choice in terms of casting
Yeah,
because he carried not that anyone didn't pull their own weight, but like you were able to lean on your lead to sell the movie in terms of
Yeah.
like people bought into it because you made this character really fun and interesting and just a lot of charisma. But
Well, I think the other problem it's gonna have is, like with his gimmick, uh, the Boys is doing like a very cynical version of that to a degree, and it's also gotten really shitty. So it's gonna burn that audience. It's gonna burn people by the time that one limps to its finale, and then people aren't gonna be down for that gimmick again.
hmm
Yeah, so just play it straight. Play Superman straight. Just do that. Just play it straight. It'll be fine.
I I think I had heard, you never know if it's true or not, but I think that I had heard that people who have seen like the early versions of the film
Mm-hmm.
that it is favorable. Whether that will translate into actual like box office success is another thing, but um and again, this is like you're hearing like anecdotal stuff, which could just be like,
Could be
propaganda.
astroturfing, yeah.
Yeah, it could be propaganda.
I
Like
mean,
it's just gonna be nuts. People are saying, but
the
I
Flash
would
has told
hope.
me to not believe anything I hear
Well,
about that stuff. Like
I was hoping that
like how
I'm hoping
Captain
that
America cost 185 million to make when it was going into its
they
reshoots and it was already at like
yeah
250 million. Like, yeah, sure, guys, it cost 185, right?
I mean, the Flash movie was sunk from the fact that Ezra's just
Walking
a
felony.
yeah. Ezra and Alberto Del Rio would make
I think Alberto Del
appropriate
Rio
team.
would have to be like, because Alberto Del Rio can like like just walk over to the corner store without assaulting a woman. So I think Alberto Del Rio has a bit of an advantage, even though he's a piece of shit. Like he somehow can, exist in his day-to-day life without abducting children and like throwing chairs at women and stuff.
Yeah,
Isn't
I
it?
agree
I
with you, but
I I don't have any like real buy-in to some of these Hollywood people, but I guess in a sense it's a shame because Ezra Miller is a guy like he's not without talent. I've seen him in like non-comic book related properties where he like did a fine job acting. So it's like you could have had like a pretty good career. Just be normal. Like,
yeah.
just be normal. Like,
Um,
and I think with him there are probably mental
where's
health
that
issues
where's
going
that
on.
Babadook meme? Where she's screaming in
Why can't you be normal? It's like
And Ezra Miller's in the back. Ah!
Have you seen Babadook, by the way?
No, I haven't.
She was
I
she
know
was
about
100
it, but
she was 100% right. That's
Babadook is actually kind of disturbing and a sad film if you actually watch it because
yeah.
it's I'll spoil this part about Babadook. It's left at the end ambiguous versus that this was actually supernatural happenings or that it was all just kind of like the temporary insanity of the main character
I,
Mhm.
over essentially grief. And I
Yeah.
won't spoil like what she's in grief about, but it's left ambiguous. And it's one of those the trope like maybe magic, maybe mundane. It's how
Mhm.
you treat it. Either she and her son were actually dealing with an actual demonic entity, or it was all just her insanity that she was trying to reconcile because of things she was dealing with.
I think the
Yeah.
I
It
think
was
the
kind of disturbing.
problem
It's a good film though.
I think the problem is she should have smothered the kid with a pillow because she was right. That kid was a monster.
The kid
and
was
he needed-
annoying at points in the film.
No, that kid was a monster
I-
and needed to be put down with vengeance.
If you want an actual like, what I would say is legitimately one of the most, in my opinion, disturbing films
Hereditary.
of the last few years. I haven't seen that. I've heard it's really messed up, but
Oh yeah,
Which
The
one, Brad?
Witch.
Hereditary. The one where
I've heard about
the
that.
one where it doesn't spoil anything. The one where the mom makes the son take his sister to a party and she ingests peanuts when she shouldn't, and when he's trying to rush her to the hospital, she's trying to throw up outside of the side of the car, and she gets decapitated by a stop
Ooh.
sign, and then it just kind of goes from there.
Okay.
It gets worse.
Oh yeah, it gets way worse.
Well,
that's kind
Not
of
arguing.
You think that's a low point?
that's
No.
kind of
No,
like
that's a hell of a start.
that's kind of like the intermission music at in Monty Python Search for the Holy Grail compared to the rest of the movie, but that's kind of the start.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Matt?
Oh, I was gonna say like The Witch is actually one of the most disturbing films I've seen recently. Recently, I mean, like I've seen it. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but
I found the most disturbing part of that movie was the atmosphere, because I think that really probably captured
Yeah.
what like that felt like.
it's a really good movie. Like it's and there it's not to sell it, because there are people who will watch it and be like, "This wasn't disturbing. What are you talking about?" It's like
Those people
it's
are try-hard
psychologically,
douches.
the atmosphere, everything. Like it's a disturbing movie in my opinion. It doesn't mean like I lost sleep over it, but it's a really well done movie. Didn't Eggers do that? David Eggers,
I think so.
who just did Nosferatu.
I need to watch
Should have,
Nosferatu.
I should ask other Brad Ryder, because he's a big
Directed
Eggers
by
fan.
Jennifer Kent.
I just rewatched Misery last year, and I was like, and Kathy Bates is really good in that. I hope she won an Oscar for that role because she was amazing in that. But I was like,
She did, right?
I was like, okay, like I know the ankle breaking scene is like why I haven't rewatched this movie, but like how bad can it possibly be? This is probably like 5 times worse in my head than it really is. And then it happened. I'm like, oh no, it was just as bad as I remembered. Probably
Yeah.
worse.
I remember there was an SNL skit where they parodied that with Kathy Bates, and it was about Dana Carvey not doing the church lady anymore. No, it wasn't Kathy Bates. It was Roseanne Barr playing Kathy Bates' role, and she's like, "Your legs are really messed up," and she like pulls the blanket back, and his legs are like all bent out like this.
They did
It's just like, oh god.
they did a parody on The Critic. Did you guys ever watch The Critic?
I did watch The Critic.
With John Lovitz back in the
Yeah.
day.
And like his because he gets the limp because the woman kidnaps him, but his friend shoots him in the leg because he comes to rescue him, and he's like you don't know what you're doing. He's like, Jay, it's a gun, not a bloody Xerox machine. Then he shoots him in the leg by mistake. He's like, oh sorry.
Oh yeah, his action star friend.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say with I don't know with Superman. I think you have to play it straight. You can't do a cynical take on Superman. I think because Man of Steel was just god awful.
Nobody wants to see cynical Superman.
I thought Man of Steel was fine. Actually, I liked Henry Cavill as Superman just in general.
He deserved better than what he got.
Yes.
100%.
I also kind of like Michael Shannon as Zod, because Michael Shannon's kind of like crazy in real life. So he played kind of a what's like the TV trope or the archetype? Like he's kind of like a Blood Knight. I mean he's really just focused. Like he even said like every action that I've taken, no matter how cruel, is like in service to my people.
Yeah.
Like, and he was really he was going to terraform Earth and kill everyone, every human being, wipe us off the face of the planet. So for Kryptonians, but you know, he at least like kind of understood what he's doing. He's being survival of the fittest, but for his own people. But I kind of
Zod
like
was
that too.
fine,
It's just
but it's like Superman.
it's just you don't need grim dark Superman. Like you don't. Like of the many superhero characters in the universe of superhero characters, like
It just
Superman's
doesn't
supposed to be
work.
like the ideal.
Yeah.
Like he's what was like the like you're the big what's his like
The
nickname?
cape.
Like you're the
The big
Well, no,
blue Boy Scout.
big blue Boy Scout. It's like you're like the goody two shoes. Like
Yeah.
you know, Batman's the grimdark character. You're supposed to be the guy that it's like you're like, oh shucks, you literally grew up in Kansas. You're like the good natured like all American boy. We're
Yeah.
all American boys.
Well, I thought that
Like,
I like the John Byrne version of Clark. I think that one is the best version of Clark because have you read like when they like the Man of Steel from like the 80s? Like when Byrne kind of reimagined him, like he comes in and like why Lois doesn't like him in this is not because like he's useless. It's because like he's an accomplished writer when he gets to the Daily Planet. Like he's
He gets hired.
yeah, and Lois is like threatened by him, and he also like interviews himself, which is kind of why she's pissed at him in that. But like, he's a much more competent, like, he's this guy that has like his football trophies and all this stuff. Like he is the All American boy, but he is like, I don't know, like an accomplished version of that.
It's and if I remember correctly, they had established that his powers didn't really kick in until not really didn't kick in until he was about to finish up in high school. Like
Yeah.
so, he was Kryptonian, but he wasn't superhuman yet.
Well, they kind of
Um,
toned him down a lot too.
yeah, but you don't do that with Superman. You just don't. That's missing the point of the character. It's like, oh, what if Superman but dark? And it's like you don't understand Superman,
I
or
think
you don't like Superman. You wanted to make Invincible, but you couldn't make Invincible, so now you're doing it to Superman.
Well, I think it's fine like in the comic form when you're doing like Elseworlds. Like I think Red Sun's like a really interesting version
Sure.
of him, or like even like when they do
Or the
like,
nail.
yeah, or like hey, what if something, you know, or even oh, what's the game called?
Injustice.
Injustice is like an interesting concept of like what happened if Lois died and it's kind of his fault, like, and he just kind of goes cuckoo bananas. Like I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
take, but that's that is for like people in the bubble. Like when you're doing that for like mainstream like normie stuff, it's a bad idea. Like you don't I always say that about Flash. When someone comes onto the Flash book and the first thing they want to do is take his speed away, I know that's a hack writer. Like
Yeah.
so it's like you don't do like a mainstream Flash thing. It's like, well, what if the Flash wasn't the Flash? Like these people don't even know who the Flash is.
Yeah, you can't. If the Flash isn't the Flash, then he's just some guy. And why are we buying a comic book for just some guy?
Yeah, it's like you don't do like Iron Man 1 and take his armor away.
Like, I remember when they relaunched Thor in the late 90s, and it wasn't that they took his powers away, but they bound him to a human.
Oh, Don Blake again.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you know what? That I can get. Like, I can roll with that. Because you're not taking away the character. What you're doing is you are giving the character an object lesson. Okay,
Well, and
but the character still does hero stuff.
that's how Thor actually originally was in the comics, was like the Don Blake
Yeah,
thing. They just kind of did away with it because it didn't work.
yeah. But
But it's like in the first FF movie, it's like you're not gonna do something of like, oh, Thing loses his powers.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I have to admit with that movie, I like Galactus in that, but man, Thing's voice just kills that whole movie so dead for me because it's not the Thing. That's not how he would talk. And people are like, "Why are you so upset about it?" It's like because he's an old school New York Jew. Like, could you imagine him yelling at the Yancey Street gang in that? Like, he's Jack Kirby. He's supposed to like. I said like he's supposed like Ben Grimm is supposed to be your loud, boisterous uncle that like takes you to shoot guns and takes you to R-rated movies and like buys you junk food and like pisses your parents off. Like that's Ben Grimm. The
and here's
character.
the
Is that
other
what
thing.
the
He's a
new
rock
one?
dude. Is that in the new one, Brad?
Yeah.
That you were talking about?
Oh,
Here's the other thing.
oh, where
Ben Grimm's a
we're
rock
cousins.
guy. He needs a gravelly voice.
Hmm.
Well, he's also a guy. He's also a guy that should sound like he spent the last 20 years of his life like cultivating his voice with a healthy dose of cigars and scotch.
Hmm.
What are you going to say, Matt? I'm sorry.
Played by Cousin. For those who watch The Bear. Um, cut. Yeah, you quizzical look, Shad. You've never watched The Bear on. Okay. So the guy who plays Ben Grimm in the new Fantastic Four movie, I have to look up his name, but he plays one of the main characters on the FX show The Bear, which has done 3 seasons now. And this has kind of been my criticism of the casting for the Fantastic Four, is that for whatever reason, maybe just because they were hoping for a hit, they just chose people who are
Hot right now.
kind of hot right now. So hold on one second. Let me see the whole cast.
It was a very Disney casting where they like took flavors of the month.
Evan Moss Backrack, who plays Richie on The Bear. He is not biologically related to the main character of who's played by Jeremy Allen White, who's known as Carmen, aka Carmi. He was like the brother. Richie was the brother's best friend, but because he grew up and was so tight with the family, with the main character Carmi's family, they call him cousin, and they call each other cousin basically. So for fans of The Bear, like on social media, whatever, like that, everyone refers to Richie as cousin because they call each other that on the show. But The Bear is a very popular show, and I think he's a very prominent character. So I feel like that's why he was cast as Ben Grimm. And I think he's a fine actor, and maybe he'll surprise me in the movie. But I get entirely what you're saying. It's like you sound like Richie from The Bear because that's who you are. You don't sound like what we all have kind of a headcanon in our heads, like Ben Grimm. So, I mean,
he doesn't like this is speaking as someone that doesn't live in New York, but like if you have like a business owned by like a New Yorker, like there is being a Midwesterner, you tend to know a New Yorker sticks out when they live here because they're very loud. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying like, and Shad probably knows what I'm talking about. If you go to like, they're very loud. There's this very boisterous, like there's a very specific way like a New Yorker talks, and like he doesn't talk like that.
Mm-hmm. This is it's a weird thing to throw out, and I swear I'm not trying to be wrestling brain, but it's like instead of Richie from The Bear as Ben Grimm, you literally could have like called up Eddie Kingston and been like, "Hey, Eddie Kingston, I need you to voice like Ben Grimm," and Eddie Kingston just sounded like Eddie Kingston would have been a better version of Ben Grimm.
It would have been perfect.
Not that well, he wouldn't have necessarily. Eddie Kingston sounds like Eddie Kingston, meaning he sounds like a Puerto Rican New Yorker kind of like, and even like his accent isn't as thick as it could be. I mean, he doesn't sound like Rosie Perez, but that sounds more like New York, from coming from Yonkers than we're getting from Richie from The Bear. But I don't know. I'm coming to the new Fantastic Four movie with an open heart, open mind. We tell my oldest daughter all the time, like, you need to have an open heart, open mind about things when she's, because she's 5 years old. It's like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, yeah, open heart, open mind. I'm coming to it, wanting it to succeed. I'm excited about it. But I have issues with the casting.
And I don't feel like
I like Pedro Pascal. It's like, I don't know that I want you or need you as.
I need him to not be. I need him to not be in everything. That's my problem right now.
They do that to everybody.
Actor.
Like, Alan Ritchson is apparently in like 6 movies that are in production because Reacher did well.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
who incidentally is really funny whenever they just do interviews.
I get that one though, because Hollywood, like, if you're doing like an action movie or need a guy that actually looks like, that's one thing I think Reacher gets. I mean, that's a really good show, but the one thing Reacher gets right is they didn't hire some like 170-pound dude to like be this like killer. They got like a big motherfucking gorilla to do it.
You mean like how they got Tom Cruise at one point?
Yeah, like no, like he is a gorilla of a person.
Yeah, I've never seen a single episode of the show. I'm aware of it. I've never seen a single episode of the show. All I know is I've seen like, promotional pictures of the guy and like a couple clips from the show.
And I'm like, justice.
Who is this dude? Because this dude is like, he probably back in the day would make like Arnold Schwarzenegger look small. Arnold was a big dude.
He is 6'3", and he works out like crazy. Whenever he did the first season,
he looks taller than that
because they cast short people around him for the show.
Well, they put him like
well, if you're 6'3", they could cast like a 5'10" guy.
But they do stuff. They do stuff like Like when he gets
I'm not
arrested,
even.
they put him in the little car so his knees are like up and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's
Look,
he's
I'm not
really
even.
like where he's really good is like his facial expressions. Like if he's just straight manning something and he's just sitting there like with this look on his face, like it's a really good show. I would
It is very fun. This might be not giving it the credit, but I call it very fun revenge fantasy porn.
Mm,
it's probably other than Good Omens, it's probably the best thing Amazon has done as a studio.
Yeah.
hmm.
It is good. It's fun to watch. It does not try to be more than what the books are. Because Lee Child wrote the books as this is fun to read while you're sitting in the airport waiting for your plane. And what did they do when they made the show? Pretty much the same thing. And so you know what? Rock on. They understood the assignment.
Yeah.
Didn't Amazon do the Jack Ryan show with Krasinski?
Yes.
What's
I
that?
think they did.
It was okay.
I liked it. They did like 3 or 4 seasons.
Reacher's better.
I think it might be. I haven't seen it, but I thought the Jack Ryan show was pretty good. They had one season that was like, this is kind of weak, but overall, I felt it was actually pretty good.
Because Ryan's not supposed to be an action hero. He's an analyst. And I think Krasinski's a really good choice for that. 'Cause he doesn't-
Krasinski, well, I mean, he did a great job because it's like it's Jim from The Office,
Yeah.
but the dude like got in like fantastic shape and was believable enough that I'm like, oh, you actually kind of like her. I can buy you as an action star here. But they also made it smart because it's like he's in good shape, so he's believable doing stuff. But he also, it wasn't like you're not trying to be Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day, like
No.
Commando killing like 1,000 people.
No.
You're decimating like your own like small Caribbean island of mercs. But
Yeah.
he was believable in this. He's like, you probably could be a CIA guy where you're unassuming, like you're in good shape, but you look like an accountant, but you're also secretly a secret agent. So I don't know. That's a pretty good show.
And
Amazon has some good stuff.
Reacher does like I would say the fights are pretty reasonable. Like they don't
Yeah.
overthink things. Like he just takes the like with Reacher, it's like if the shortest way to victory is he's just gonna kick some guy in the balls, he's gonna do it. Like he's not like it's
Yeah.
Mm.
it's
Look, the idea, the guy's name is Reacher because it's based off the idea that he's tall enough to reach stuff on the back of the top shelf. Like, he has to be a big dude. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to have Tom Cruise do it. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I haven't even read the books and I knew what kind of crap that was.
yeah.
But it is, the fight scenes are done very well. Richardson plays the brutal violence properly. Like there's a lot of it's done
The char-
properly.
the rapport he has with the other characters is really good.
Yeah. I think season 1's better, but
I haven't seen the new
they're
season
fun.
yet.
I haven't seen season 3 either.
I will say
But-
with Ben, I'm honestly just a little. I'm gonna be hyper critical of Ben more than anything, just because like he is one of my favorite comic characters.
Mm.
Because like
Yeah.
because like I'll say like Spider-Man, like there's a lot of interpretations you could do of Peter Parker that's okay. But like I
I
think
mean, we had 3 decent adaptations. We had Maguire, we had Garfield, and we had baby version.
Tom Holland.
Yes, him.
though I think it's funny
I
how
like Tom Holland a lot.
yeah. I think it's funny though everyone's obsession with Parker being in high school. Because that's the one everyone like hyper focused on. He should be in high school. It's like you realize in the comics, like the original comics, he graduated high school in like issue 28. Like
Yeah.
he in like the real continuity, he was like barely in high school. Like they moved on from that really quick.
Yeah.
Well, and let me look it up. I think Tom Holland is like 30 now.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's babyface. Let me see how old he is. He's 28. He's turning 29 this year. He's babyface, but it's like you also don't look like a teen, like a high school kid anymore. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the latest is that he signed on to do another Spider-Man film.
Yeah, I think they're getting that. I think they realized they need to get a Spider-Man movie out because all those like offshoot ones they just did bombed horribly.
The Venom
Oh,
ones.
oh
Oh,
no,
Venom did it.
Madam Web.
Oh, and Craven.
Oh,
Craven bombed horribly too.
which is, I mean, it could have been terrible, and that's fine. But I thought that like some of the trailers, like I'm like, oh, this could be interesting, but then it bombed horribly. Not that I rushed out to go see it in theaters, but you know,
Yeah.
like, well, maybe I'll give it a chance. But apparently, it was not good.
So what would each of yours favorite villain be? And let's do
Wow.
don't do like do someone that might be a second tier villain. Like I'll go with let's see who could I go with that I love. I love like in I'll go with Spider-Man. Like I love like the Sinister Syndicate in Spider-Man, which is like the Rhino, the Beetle, Speed Demon,
Sinister Six?
Boomerang.
Oh,
No,
you said Sinister Syndicate.
yeah.
Hmm.
Which they did get like a short series. Um in the tens, they got like a 16 issue thing. Oh, Hydra Man's in that too. I guess Hydra Man's not obscure anymore though. Because he was in the second Spider-Man, wasn't he? Of the
I'm in
recent
a
series.
props mood for some reason tonight.
Oh, the what?
I'm
The second of the recent Spider-Mans, he was in the second one, wasn't he? Homecoming.
Uh, not not described as Hydra Man. Like they kind of did what was styled as like elementals.
Oh,
So it was kind of like a Hydra Man type character, but I mean, they didn't describe it as Hydra Man.
he did get an action
And it
figure
was
in the when the Spider-Man cartoon was on though, because I had that.
all right. So in a move that will surprise no one of mine is going to be Black Adam. I appreciate the fact that when it comes to being a villain, he's a reasonably complex, well done villain. But then the other villain that I really like is Bane.
oh, Bane.
Bang.
Oh, I'm gonna blow up Gotham Stadium. Like Bane is the only reason that I want to watch any more of the Harley Quinn show because I think that the
They-
portrayal.
He appears.
They were it's after the second season
One of us was supposed to be in the wreckage, brother.
they totally screwed it up after the second season.
Oh, Harley
Look,
Quinn.
man.
Yeah.
Look, man.
I-
I'm just saying.
Look, y'all raved about that, or at least Brad did, and I made it through like maybe half of the first season, and even then I already saw like some of the things they were gonna go with, and I'm like, I'm not
The
feeling
Joker
this.
stuff.
Like
The Joker stuff
they're kind
even
of
later
getting
is
silly.
Silly, yes, but I mean that was part of the fun. I thought, and okay, I know. I think I've only watched the first season, but I got a lot of entertainment out of Kite Man. Obviously, I got a lot out of Bane. Like there was a lot in that show that I got a big laugh out of, and that's all I was looking for. I was not looking for more than that.
they do some
It's
funny
just-
stuff with Batman in season 2. But season 3 it kind of goes off the rails and I don't know what they've done since then cuz I lost interest. I mean,
Mm.
but then Rick and Morty kind of went off the rails about season 4 too for me.
Yeah, yeah.
God even knows what they're doing with that show now.
Oh.
I haven't watched it in like 2-3 years.
I haven't either cuz I got like halfway into one season I'm like I just can't do this anymore.
I've really liked the show, so it's not that I banned it because like, oh, I think it's terrible. Just it's one of those many things like my life is busy, so I don't have a lot of free time. So I try to like watch wrestling, because I
Yeah.
love wrestling. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I have like an hour. Let me watch some. I will like let me watch wrestling. Let me watch like Dynamite on my DVR, or let me watch, Tokyo Joshi Pro or something. So
Yeah.
it isn't like let me now watch like an hour of Rick and Morty. So I just haven't prioritized it, not because it's like, oh, I think it sucks, but I don't know. Like I also was in truth be told, I was kind of turned off by the whole like Justin Roiland scandal situation where he got ousted, but he also kind of should have been ousted because I mean he was not a good guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But that kind of soured me too, where it's like,
problem is, I think a lot of
I
that
guess I
ended
felt-
up being bullshit too, and so they ousted him, and he ended up like not doing a lot of it. I don't think he was a great
I don't know.
person, but like now we're stuck with like a butchered Rick voice on top of it. They started
don't know.
pawning it off like the regular creators. It's kind of like Family Guy, where it's just a bunch of writers now, and the original creators kind of like off doing something else. So
Mm.
you're really at the whims of whoever they have working it that year.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt? Do you have a?
That's tough because I love so Batman's my favorite character of all time. There's probably tons of like his rogues gallery that I could pick. Bane's a good pick. I've always been partial to like Riddler. I know he's like main, but he's not like Joker level main. Even
He's
though
not primary. Yeah.
Easy.
even though my wife and I finally years later we finally saw the 2022 Robert Pattinson the Batman where where Riddler was the main character, and it's like I actually really liked the movie. It was really good. I liked it.
Well, if you like that,
I think it's
the Penguin.
fucking bullshit that I think it's bullshit. I haven't seen the Penguin show. I want to see it though. I've heard it's good.
It's in that universe. Just FYI. It's in
Yes,
that.
yes, and I've heard Colin Farrell I think got nominated for like Emmys. Like
Yeah.
it was.
He said he doesn't
It's
want to do
supposed
it
to be a really
anymore
good
because I
show.
guess the doing the makeup and stuff was absolute misery. But it's in that universe.
Well, because he's not a big dude, and you have like put 100 pounds of makeup in
Yeah.
a fat suit on you. But I'm excited for like the sequel. But then even Robert Pattinson's like bitching because it's like I started this movie franchise as young Batman. I'm gonna be old Batman by the time the second movie comes out. But
Yeah, that's how it works.
yeah. Well, there's no reason. I mean, the writer strike is the real answer,
Well,
probably.
COVID.
But there's also no reason why it's like this is not a film you need to take like 4 years in between each film.
They
Like,
do that
no.
with
But
everything now, though. It's like video games where it's like, oh hey, the sequel is gonna be in a decade. Like, try not to die like before we finish this trilogy of games.
I'm not gonna. There are shows that my wife and I watch that if it's like a couple years in between, it's like I don't remember what happened.
No,
Like, you need to do this shit yearly if you want me to
Yeah.
remember the stuff going on.
even yearly, I forget shit.
I
yeah.
can probably remember like yearly, but if it's like 2 years, I'm gonna be like, I'm not gonna remember. I'm gonna maybe like the shocking twist, but I'm not gonna remember like some
Well,
of the,
especially
the
if it's
smaller
like,
details.
especially like if it's like the second or third season, they've added some characters, and like it comes on, and you haven't seen it for 2 years, and like, who the fuck is this character?
Mm.
Like that's always
Yeah.
a bad like start.
I said Riddler.
Riddler actually is a
on
good one though, because until like recently, like he wasn't in the comics like a ton. He was always kind of more outside. Like I think he really
they've done my opinion, they've done some interesting things with Riddler at times in the last like 25, 30 years with him where he's never been well, the Batman Arkham Asylum games were different, but generally speaking, they've never presented Riddler as kind of like psychotically evil. He may be a little like, some screws loose, but
it was more of a
I guess
he
the
was
Batman 2022 film, he was basically a serial killer. But
he was a little
he's
more
generally-
like a Flash rogue, in that it was more
Yeah,
of a
he's-
game. It was more about the game for him.
yeah, he's a villain and he does villainous things, but he's not like, let me just kill a bunch of innocent people because for the lulls. So they've done some interesting things with him at points where he's almost kind of been like an anti-hero, where it's like he can do sometimes, he can fill the role sometimes as like doing heroic things. I remember one, this is many years ago, probably like 2 decades or more ago, but they did a storyline where he was kind of, I'm trying to reform myself, and he was acting almost as like a private detective.
Oh yeah, that was the
I
Paul
think they wrapped
Dini.
him in with
That was the Paul
oh,
Dini
okay,
detective run, wasn't it?
maybe didn't they wrap him into like he was kind of like wrapped into like the Catwoman stuff where he
Maybe.
was almost
It's.
like a secondary character to Catwoman
I
where he's
think
like,
it.
no, I'm trying to reform myself, and he was kind of heroic a little bit. He's not, a good guy character, but like I said, they
I
try
think.
they flirted at points with him being sort of an anti-hero, and I think that to me is a compelling part of him because if you want to just make him not just psychotically villainous, have him be like you can flirt back and forth with him being like
I kind of
maybe
like
he
the
likes just
idea
being a
of.
criminal.
I
He
kind.
likes robbing people, but
I kind of like him is like kind of a neutral, like kind of trickster role where he's just in it for the game.
yeah, I like that aspect of him as a trickster.
I always took Riddler as it's not about being evil. It's about that the Riddler's a raging narcissist, so he's like, no, 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 no. I'm not doing this because I want the money. That's not the point. I want people to recognize how smart I am. And so he's not out to harm people. He's out to prove that he's good enough to do this stuff, which I think in the same way you guys were just talking, just in kind of a different way, sets him apart from the rest of the Rogues Gallery. It's so many of the Rogues Gallery are just dangerously detached. The Riddler's not detached. He's just really super self-centered.
I actually, they're kind of a lost art and people have done them wrong. But like Flash's rogues, I think are honestly some of the best written villains because if you don't know them, that's like Captain Cold, Captain Boomerang, Mirror
D-Wave,
Master, Weather Wizard, and like they have like a whole thing.
trickster.
Yeah,
Trickster.
they're
Hang on,
not.
let me do this properly, Brad. Got me again, Flash!
Yeah. So their idea is it's more of like a game for them. They are like just they're out for money. They don't want to hurt anyone. They're not even out to like kill the Flash. They just want to one up him. And like they even
Mm.
have like no, I wouldn't even say it's a begrudging respect for him. They just have a respect for him.
Yeah.
And like they're the first ones. They've fucked it up a lot, but like even like when like Forever Evil happened or some other stuff, like they're the first ones to be like, "Whoa, you guys are fucking crazy. We're out. This is not like our deal."
I but I like that because one of the things I guess just temperamentally or intellectually I like when you subvert tropes. And I feel like they subvert a lot of tropes because it's like we're villains, we're the villains of the Flash, and then it's like they're presented oftentimes with the opportunity to do something like truly evil and villainous, and they're like, no, like we're more about this. Look, we're criminals. This is a profession. Like
Yeah.
they're accountants. It's like, look, we rob banks. That's what we do. Like, how about you kill this kid over here? It's like, no, screw you. I'm gonna go rob a bank. Like, I'm not about that. What are you talking about? I'm not gonna do that. So but they hate the Flash, so they'll like, fight the Flash, whatever, like that.
They don't even hate
But
him.
what? Well, yeah, I'm kind of like being a little bit engaging in hyperbole, but point is like they have their own morality,
Yeah.
and it trends to again. I don't know if I would call them anti-heroes, but they are kind of like maybe anti-villains, where it's like they're villainous characters because they do bad things or antisocial things, but they are not by and large like necessarily evil.
They're
And to the extent that
I would call
sometimes
them
they do really
chaotic.
evil things,
They-
yeah, they're kind of chaotic.
Well, I would say, well, if I was to give them a D&D alignment, that would actually be interesting. I would say they're probably chaotic neutral or lawful evil. I would say chaotic neutral. Because I guess
Because they're
Oh.
villains, I want to put them more as like lawful evil because they do have
well,
their own
but see,
morality.
but the thing is, Lex Luthor would be lawful evil.
I was put them
That's
just
true.
just barely into the true neutral category. Because they're operating all in self-interest, but they're not really wanting to do
Well,
evil stuff.
And they do have a code though, because they do have
Yeah.
a written code about how it's about the score and you don't kill the Flash and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So they do have like
So,
a code.
Matt,
That would be interesting.
your phrase where like kill this. unlocked an old memory for me from the Tick animated show. Oh yeah, if you're so evil, eat this kitten. No, that's just mean.
No. Okay.
I love
Read up.
read a book.
Oedipus.
Achilles in his tent.
I just
Tore
remember.
his own eyes out. Read a book.
I just remember when he got. Was it the tick that ended up in Tung Tung? And he's like, I can taste the floor. Or was that Arthur?
That was Arthur.
Yeah.
I was like, oh god, I'm tasting the floor.
Or wait, was that the one where a tick ended up in like the most comfortable couch like or chair ever like created, and he had to like break
I
free?
don't know, but God, that show is amazing. That animated show is just spectacular. It is so goofy, and
It
I
is.
love how goofy it
Or
is.
when they go when they go into the sewers and like sewer urchin is like amazing and like a mega star in the sewers.
Yeah, but he's been Dustin Hoffman as Rain Man the entire time.
Yeah. I need to rewatch
Yeah.
that. Because I see little clips of it here and there, and it still holds up and is like funny.
Yeah,
I'll throw the Rogues out there. I did say the Sinister Syndicate, but I think the Rogues are very underrated, especially now because I don't think they've had any like good stories done with them for a long time.
yeah.
Oh, Pied Piper. I don't think he's been a rogue for a long time though, because I think he's been more on the Flash's like
Well, he's
good guy side.
I mean, he's kind of started as a rogue, but then
In the
he's
Wally
been-
years, he kind of was a Wally.
yeah,
like, friend.
yeah, he became more of the hero.
It is funny, like when I got in, like, well, no, I think Hal was still the Green Lantern. I was gonna say like, kind of my coming of age in DC had like Wally and Kyle and crap, what was the one Arrow's name? Not
Honor Hawk.
Honor.
Connor. Yeah, Connor was the main Arrow in the book.
I like Kyle probably best of all the Green Lanterns because Kyle's not man without fear. Kyle full bore knows and is terrified of a lot of stuff, but goes and does it anyway. And
That- So
he's
why
creative?
Why do you choose Kyle?
Number one, I think
Do you
Kyle's
f-
more fun. I think Kyle's constructs, him being an artist means his constructs are more fun. They're more inventive. They're not globe, beam, and boxing glove.
Do you feel it's tied into your age? Because this, and I only say this not to be unfair to you, but I say
Yeah.
this because this is kind of like who's your favorite Star Trek captain?
Or it's
And
who your
I would
favorite
be like,
Doctor is.
Oh, I would well see that Shad. That's a great example. I would be like, oh, Picard, and it's like because
Cisco.
when I was young, like Star Trek, it was Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah,
That was my exposure to Star Trek.
yeah.
So I loved him. But I feel you're a little bit younger than me. So it's like, oh, your exposure would have been Deep Space Nine.
But it
maybe.
wasn't because
Oh.
I watched original series movies with my dad. I watched TNG with my dad, and then
Hmm.
later on, I didn't get to watch DS9 because the channel we had it didn't come on or something like that. And I watched DS9 later and liked DS9 a lot more. Cisco's my guy.
I will say I'm gonna do this right now. I'm not really gonna do this, but pour one out to Tony Todd, aka Jake Sisko, who
Yeah.
passed away unfortunately not that long ago.
And Renee Auberjonois.
He's been-
Auberginois.
Yeah.
I probably would rank Hal as still my favorite Green Lantern, but Kyle is very, very popular.
Look-
And I almost feel I feel like there could be like an age thing because
That's
Oh,
how
there you
much
go.
of it. That's how much on
I
the,
think
the DS9 train I am.
Engage.
I think
Engage.
I think the thing is though, I think that plays into it, but there are distinct advantages to like Hal versus Kyle because I think the thing that DC misses like with the Wally versus Barry thing is like objectively by all standards, Wally is a better Flash than Barry, and the only thing keeping Barry around was a bunch of old men that wanted him in the books because
Mm.
like they're comfortable enough keeping Kyle around with Hal, but like with Barry, they have to they can't they have to get rid of Wally because people like Wally better. Because Wally's just a Wally has had more character development. He was allowed to have a life. Like Barry's just kind of boring.
I mean, and there's a big difference in the expression of different characters in the Lantern Rings than there is in running very fast. I like Kyle because, like I said, I like the creative aspect for his constructs. I like the fact that Kyle can be afraid of something and still step up to it. Like, the idea behind Jordan is men without fear. That makes him a great Green Lantern. I'm like, but that's boring. He's always going to go headlong into it. I like Kyle because Kyle will be like, oh God, this is awful. This is going to kill me. Okay, what am I going to do about it? Like, I think Kyle is much more interesting character.
My favorite is Salak.
Hmm.
Because I just like the bureaucrat lantern.
Shad,
Yes, sir.
well, this is kind of going like full circle into perhaps like our discussion of like the DC cinematic universe. But have you seen? I don't think it's too early. I think this would have done like a teaser because I haven't seen one. But have you seen stills? Excuse me, for the Green Lantern series that they're doing for, I think it's Max.
I saw one.
I think I
Okay.
saw one.
But it's starring Kyle Chandler, who is a good actor as Hal Jordan.
I think the still that I saw had Hal and John Stewart in the same frame.
Yeah, I think it's the same one. Maybe it's only done like one.
If they're doing it as an ensemble cast, I'm down for that. It's like, okay, cool. Like I really dig that idea. What superhero show or movie has, outside of the Avengers, but they had to build all the way up to that with the Avengers. Everybody had to have their own movie first. What do we get? We get this ensemble. I like that. I think that's a.
I think over the years, Jon Stewart's grown on me, and he's become my favorite.
I like him a lot.
I think the thing you're missing with Hal, though, when Hal's written well, like there is that aspect of Hal, but like the recklessness, even to the point of like his personal life and like love interest, and like there's I think an understated aspect of Hal that they dig into at times that is his selfishness as a person kind of comes up sometimes, and I think like when Jeff Johns was writing Hal, I thought he did a really good job of like kind of rounding him out and making him interesting. But like I think when they focus on the negatives of his like personality is when he works. Like the negatives of like being the daredevil and the
Hal is, for all of his bravado and man without fear and stuff, he's only good at two things. He's good at being a test pilot and he's good at being a ring slinger. And he is a complete and utter train wreck at everything else.
and he's kind of like emotionally stunted as a person a lot.
Yeah. And I like Kyle more.
But I like John.
To,
But what I like about John is I like the military man. I kind of like he's got the stick up his ass. Like those are the things I like about him. He's got like he's got a bit of the streak of like what I like about Steve Rogers in him.
Hmm.
Okay.
Just kind of that
I-
rigid.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I want to say shout out to Phil Lamar, who, in my opinion, did a great version of Jon Stewart in the Justice League cartoon. Like, I actually thought that version of Jon Stewart was fantastic.
I'm of the opinion that if I have to pick a continuity to be the canon continuity for DC stuff, it's that the Batman
Justice
animated
League.
series, Superman, Justice League continuity. That's
Static
canon.
Shock is
You
in that canon too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
As an aside, you know what I actually thought they kind of flirted with, but didn't go full on. But I thought was interesting because it really the whole DC Trinity kind of to me like was
Mhm.
turning it on its ear. Is that in the Justice League show they really flirted with like Batman and Wonder Woman being a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, that scene
they
was
always-
so damn funny.
When they always ship like Superman Wonder Woman, but I thought it was interesting. Like I like
Yeah.
that.
They
Well,
also
and then
also the best version
Diana
of
pulls Bruce. Hang on, Diana pulls Bruce up short because he's like, "I have enemies, and I don't want anything to happen." And she like crushes the stonework. She goes, "Uh-huh. Tell me about your enemies, Bruce." And I was just like, he's trying to run her off because he's afraid of getting close to someone, and she's like, "Your excuses are not gonna work, Bruce."
I think they got Amanda Waller really right in that. And I also
Oh
liked
yeah.
my favorite two-parter of that is when the Legion of Doom catches Batman
Oh
and
yeah.
Joker's like, we just need to kill him. And he like and finally the Ultra Humanite turns on him and they're like, why did you do that? And he walks by, he's like, we're like and he's
You
like
remember our deal?
he's like, yes, double what Luther paid. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that the shows get right. Or
Yeah.
the other one of my favorites, and it's probably one of my favorite lines from Batman the Animated Series was Joker being like, "I'm crazy enough to take on Batman, but the IRS like, no, 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 no,
No,
no."
thank you.
Yeah,
And they did the Captain Marvel shows up in one episode of Justice League named Clash, but it's really good. And like everybody in that makes sense. And then Cap calling out the original 7 members and leaving the league. It's just like, dude. Like the whole series is really good.
I like the movie Him vs Superman. I thought that was one of their good animated movies.
First Thunder?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
and the
That
one where
one's
they
also
did
really
the
good.
Tower of Babel. They
Tower Babel?
yeah,
Arababble.
they did
Yeah.
they did a version of that. Their movies were really good for a while. Then they kind of started going into this like try hard edgelord stuff, and I just lost interest. But I agree with you. That's like that's been my frustration with the Batman comics. I still like them, but I'm always like Batman the Animated Series got him perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the problem. It's just like, what are we gonna
Because he towed the line between like he towed the line that the comics don't do. He wasn't like Bat Jerk.
He was distant, but he wasn't cold.
And they know how to use Robin to lighten it up or Alfred to like lighten it up.
Yeah. Robin made a good audience surrogate for explaining stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we've hit this topic pretty well
I
with
think
our
so too.
ramblings about AEW and movies and everything, but I think we're gonna call it a week here. I don't know what we're doing next week because we have some outside stuff, so we're gonna work in USWA, and we want to do a couple things for Mania. I think we're gonna try and watch Mania 14 and 17 for the show because we're kind of doing the bookends of I would say the Attitude Era.
About time I watched Mania 17 all the way through.
You've never watched it all the way through? That's probably still the best Mania.
It probably is.
I was living at home at the time. I was young enough that I was living at home, so I got that live. I like begged my parents, like I need this. Like it's so good. Rock versus Austin. So I watched this live on pay per view.
I did too, and it upsets me because you can't find it anymore. But like they edited it out, like where Eddie Guerrero's match. He was getting out of the ring and he tripped and he just face plants right outside the ring and like their match, and it's hilarious. But they've edited it off everything ever since.
Mm.
Kind of like Gene's fuck it, like who like with
Fuck
the
it.
side and is it am I he said fuck it, right? Or am I thinking of Bill O'Reilly on like Inside Edition?
I think you're thinking of Bill O'Reilly. Eddie's
Fuck it,
thing
we'll
was
do it
him.
live.
Yeah,
That was,
I think he was
Yeah.
screaming at where's Vicky? But anyway,
Okay. So that is it for this week. Thank you for joining us as always. I don't know what we're doing next week because reasons, but that is it for this week, and we will catch you next time.